Part 1. The sun was setting over New York City, painting the skyline in shades of orange and pink. People hurried along the streets, some heading home after a long day at work, others stopping to grab dinner or meet friends. It was an ordinary evening, until it wasn't. A low hum filled the air, growing louder with each passing second. The sound was strange, almost otherworldly, and it made everyone pause. Cars slowed down, conversations stopped, and heads turned upward toward the sky above the city. Something incredible was happening. The clouds seemed to shimmer as if light were bending around them. Then, without warning, a massive object descended from the heavens. It was enormous, easily dwarfing the tallest skyscrapers. Its surface gleamed like polished silver, reflecting the fading sunlight in dazzling patterns. The ship didn't make any noise as it hovered above Manhattan, yet its presence was overwhelming. Everyone who saw it felt small, insignificant, and utterly awestruck. Among the crowd standing on the sidewalk was Alex Carter, a young astrophysicist with messy brown hair and glasses perched on his nose. He had spent years studying the stars, dreaming of the day humanity might encounter intelligent life beyond Earth. But now that it was actually happening, he found himself frozen in place, unable to move or speak. Beside him stood Maria Lopez, his colleague and closest friend. She clutched a tablet tightly in her hands, her dark eyes wide with disbelief. "Is this real?" Maria whispered, her voice barely audible over the murmurs of the crowd. Alex nodded slowly, still staring up at the colossal vessel. "It's real," he said, his tone filled with awe. This is it." People around them began taking photos and videos with their phones, sharing the moment with friends and family online. Some laughed nervously, while others looked terrified. A few even dropped to their knees, praying aloud. The mood was chaotic, a mix of excitement, fear, and confusion. No one knew what to expect next. Then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the ship opened. A section of its smooth surface slid aside, revealing a bright light within. From the opening emerged several figures, tall and slender, with translucent skin that glowed faintly. Their limbs moved gracefully, almost unnaturally, as they stepped onto a platform that extended from the ship. They were unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. One of the beings stepped forward, clearly the leader. His or its voice echoed through the air, not coming from any visible source but resonating directly in people's minds. "We are the Vorthon," the voice said calmly. "We come in peace, but we must inform you. Your species is weak. We have studied your biology, your technology, and your history. You are ill-suited for survival beyond this planet." The words hit the crowd like a shockwave. Gasps rippled through the gathering, followed by angry shouts and cries of protest. Weak, how dare they call humans weak? Humans had built civilizations, explored space, cured diseases, and created art that inspired millions. Yet, as Alex listened to the aliens' words, he couldn't help but wonder if there was some truth to them. Compared to these advanced beings, humanity did seem primitive. Maria nudged him gently, snapping him out of his thoughts. "Did you hear that?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "They've been studying us. Do you think they're lying?" Alex shook his head. "I don't know. But there's something off about them. Look at how they're reacting to the atmosphere." He pointed toward the aliens, who had paused momentarily, their glowing forms flickering faintly. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but Alex noticed it immediately. Whatever they had expected to find on Earth, it wasn't what they were experiencing now. Back at their lab later that night, Alex and Maria pored over data collected during the Vorthon's arrival. The equipment they used to monitor atmospheric conditions had picked up unusual readings, spikes in energy levels and strange fluctuations in particle density. At first glance it seemed random, but the more they analyzed the numbers, the clearer it became that something extraordinary was happening. Maria leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. "This doesn't make sense," she muttered. "These readings shouldn't be possible. There's something in the air, something we can't explain." Alex nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. Maybe the Vorthon triggered it somehow. Or maybe... He trailed off, unsure how to finish the thought. Or maybe it's always been there, Maria finished for him. What if Earth's atmosphere isn't what we think it is? The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. If the atmosphere contained something unknown, something capable of affecting even highly advanced beings like the Vorthon, then humanity had been living under a veil of ignorance for centuries. And if the Vorthon realized the implications, it could change everything. As dawn broke over the city, Alex and Maria decided to take their findings to someone who might understand. Neither of them slept. Instead, they worked tirelessly, compiling evidence and preparing a presentation. By the time they left the lab, the streets were already buzzing with news of the Vorthon's arrival. Reporters shouted questions outside. Government buildings and social media was flooded with theories ranging from conspiracy to divine intervention. Despite the chaos, Alex remained focused. He knew they were onto something big, something that could alter humanity's understanding of itself and its place in the universe. As he walked alongside Maria, he glanced up at the sky once more. The Vorthon ship was still there, hovering silently above the city. They're watching us, Alex said quietly, and I think they're learning more than we realize. Maria nodded, her expression grim. Let's hope we learn enough to keep up. With that, they set off toward the safe house where Emily Dawson, the former NASA engineer, awaited them. Little did they know, their discovery would soon become the key to humanity's survival, and perhaps its greatest challenge yet. The safe house was located in a quiet, unassuming neighborhood on the outskirts of Washington, D.C. It was a small brick house with faded paint and overgrown bushes surrounding it, the kind of place that blended into the background and didn't draw attention. Alex and Maria arrived just as the first rays of sunlight began to peek over the horizon. They were tired but too wired to sleep. Their minds raced with questions about the strange readings they had discovered in Earth's atmosphere and what it might mean for humanity's encounter with the Vorthon. Emily Dawson was waiting for them inside. She was older than Alex and Maria, perhaps in her late 40s, with short gray-streaked hair and sharp green eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Her expression was calm, but there was an intensity about her that made it clear she wasn't someone to be underestimated. Emily had spent years working for NASA before becoming disillusioned with government secrecy. Now she lived off the grid, dedicating herself to uncovering truths hidden from the public. "You're late," Emily said as they stepped through the door, though her tone wasn't harsh. She motioned for them to sit at the cluttered kitchen table where stacks of papers, old laptops, and coffee mugs were scattered haphazardly. "Sorry," Maria replied, setting her bag down. "We had to make sure we weren't followed." Emily nodded approvingly. "Good thinking. The last thing we need is unwanted attention." She poured them each a cup of coffee and gestured toward the tablet Maria was holding. "So, what did you find?" Alex hesitated for a moment, unsure how to explain everything without sounding like he'd lost his mind. Finally, he took a deep breath and began. "We've been monitoring the atmosphere since the Vorthon arrived. There's something unusual happening, something we can't fully understand yet. The air is filled with these particles, tiny machines maybe. They're adaptive, intelligent even, and they seem to react when the Vorthon are nearby." Emily listened intently, her brow furrowing as Alex spoke. When he finished, she leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling as if trying to piece together a puzzle. After a long pause, she finally spoke. "I think I know what you're talking about," she said quietly. "And if I'm right, this changes everything." She stood up and walked over to a locked cabinet in the corner of the room. Pulling out a set of keys, she unlocked it and retrieved a dusty folder. Inside were yellowed documents, photographs, and handwritten notes. She spread them across the table, pointing to a diagram of what looked like microscopic machines. "This was part of a top-secret project back in the 1960s, she explained. "It was called Operation Guardian. The idea was to create nanobots, tiny robots, that could protect Earth from biological threats like viruses or chemical weapons. But once they were released into the atmosphere, they evolved. They became more complex, more autonomous. Eventually, the government shut the program down because they couldn't control them anymore. Maria picked up one of the photos, studying it closely. "These are the particles we've been detecting?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. Emily nodded. "Yes, and based on what you've described, they're still active. Maybe even more advanced than before." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. If Emily was right, then Earth's atmosphere wasn't just a passive environment. It was alive, teeming with microscopic guardians that had been protecting humanity for decades. But why hadn't anyone noticed until now? And what did the Vorthon know about them? As if reading his thoughts, Emily continued. "The Vorthon must have detected the nanobots during their scans. That's why they paused when they first arrived. They realized Earth isn't as defenseless as they thought." "But why would they care?" Maria asked. "If the nanobots are harmless, why would the Vorthon see them as a threat?" Emily sighed, her expression darkening. "Because they aren't harmless, not entirely. These nanobots were designed to adapt, to neutralize any threat they perceive. And to them, the Vorthon might look like invaders. The implications were staggering. If the nanobots viewed the Vorthon as a danger, they could potentially attack. But how? And at what cost?" Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were sitting on the edge of a precipice, staring into the unknown. Over the next few hours, the three of them worked feverishly, analyzing the data Alex and Maria had brought with them and cross-referencing it with Emily's research. They discovered that the nanobots weren't just reacting to the Vorthon. They were communicating with each other, forming intricate networks that spanned the entire planet. It was as if Earth itself had developed a nervous system, capable of sensing and responding to external stimuli. "This is incredible," Maria whispered, her eyes glued to the screen of one of the laptops. "They're not just machines, they're alive." Emily nodded grimly. "In a way, yes. And if the Vorthon try anything aggressive, the nanobots will fight back. The question is whether humanity will survive the fallout." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden burst of static from the radio on the counter. At first it sounded like interference, but then a voice broke through, shaky and distorted. "Repeat, this is Station Alpha. We are under attack. Multiple unidentified vessels approaching global coordinates." Alex grabbed the radio, turning up the volume. "What's happening?" he demanded. There was no response, only more static. Then abruptly the transmission cut off. The room fell silent, the weight of the situation pressing down on all of them. "We need to get back to the city," Alex said finally, his voice firm despite the knot of fear in his stomach. "If the Vorthon are escalating, we need to figure out how to use the nanobots to our advantage." Emily hesitated, clearly torn between caution and urgency. "You're playing with fire," she warned. "If you trigger the nanobots prematurely, you could cause more harm than good." "We don't have a choice," Maria interjected. "If the Vorthon decide to attack, we'll need every weapon we can get." Reluctantly, Emily agreed to help them. Together, they packed up the equipment and headed back to New York, where the Vorthon ship still loomed ominously over the skyline. The city was eerily quiet, its usual bustle replaced by an oppressive sense of anticipation. People stayed indoors, watching the news and waiting for updates. No one knew what was coming next. When they reached the lab, Alex and Maria immediately set to work, using Emily's research to refine their understanding of the nanobots. They ran simulations, tested theories, and debated strategies late into the night. Slowly, a plan began to take shape. If they could amplify the nanobots' activity, they might be able to create a protective barrier around Earth, a shield that would repel the Vorthon without causing widespread destruction. But implementing the plan wouldn't be easy. They needed access to powerful transmitters, ones capable of broadcasting signals across the globe. And they needed to act quickly, before the Vorthon launched their next move. As dawn approached, Alex stared out the window at the alien ship, its sleek surface glinting in the early morning light. He felt a mix of dread and determination. Humanity was standing on the brink of annihilation, or salvation. Either way, The choices they made in the coming days would define the future of the planet. "We can do this," Maria said softly, joining him at the window. "We have to," Alex nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, let's hope the nanobots agree." With that, they turned back to their work, knowing that time was running out. The plan was risky, but Alex, Maria, and Emily didn't have many options. They knew the nanobots in Earth's atmosphere could be humanity's best defense against the Vorthon, but they also knew that activating them on such a large scale could have unpredictable consequences. Still, doing nothing wasn't an option either. If the Vorthon decided to attack, Earth would need every advantage it could get. Their first step was to locate a powerful transmitter. After hours of searching through old government databases and abandoned facilities, Emily remembered something. A decommissioned satellite station located deep in the Nevada desert. It had been part of a Cold War-era communication network designed to broadcast signals across vast distances. Though outdated, its equipment might still work if they could get it running again. The journey to the station was tense. The roads were nearly empty, as most people were staying indoors or fleeing major cities in fear of the Vorthon. News reports painted a grim picture. Strange energy pulses emitted by the alien ships were disrupting power grids and disabling technology worldwide. Airports were shut down, hospitals struggled to operate without electricity, and panic was spreading like wildfire. Every mile they traveled felt heavier than the last, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on them. When they finally arrived at the satellite station, they found it exactly as Emily had described: deserted, overgrown with weeds, and covered in dust. The main building was a crumbling concrete structure surrounded by rusting antennas and satellite dishes. Inside, cobwebs hung from the ceiling and the air smelled musty. But despite its neglected state, the equipment appeared intact. "This is it," Emily said, brushing dirt off a control panel. "If we can power this thing up, we might be able to send a signal strong enough to activate the nanobots globally." Maria pulled out her laptop and began connecting it to the system. "We'll need to write a custom program," she explained. "Something that mimics the natural frequencies the nanobots use to communicate. If we can amplify those signals, we can trigger their defensive mechanisms." Alex nodded, rolling up his sleeves. "Let's get to work." For the next several hours, the three of them worked tirelessly. Emily focused on restoring power to the facility, rigging together generators and bypassing faulty circuits. Maria wrote lines of code, testing and retesting her program to ensure it would function properly. Meanwhile, Alex scoured the building for spare parts, repairing broken components and calibrating the satellite dishes to aim at specific points in the atmosphere. As night fell, the hum of machinery filled the room, a sign that their efforts were paying off. For the first time since the Vorthon's arrival, Alex allowed himself a moment of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could turn the tide. But their optimism was short-lived. As they prepared to test the system, a loud rumble shook the ground outside. The sound grew louder, accompanied by flashes of light visible through the cracked windows. Alex ran to the door and peered outside, his heart sinking at what he saw. A massive Vorthon ship had descended nearby, its sleek surface glowing ominously. Smaller craft detached from the main vessel, hovering closer to the station. "They've found us," Alex whispered, closing the door quietly. Maria looked up from her computer, her face pale. "How?" Emily frowned, thinking quickly. "They must have traced our activity. Activating this equipment probably gave away our position." "We can't stop now," Alex said firmly. "If we don't finish this, it won't matter whether they find us or not. Humanity won't stand a chance." With renewed determination, they returned to their tasks, working faster than before. Outside, the Vorthon ships circled the station, their movements deliberate and calculated. Beams of light scanned the area, illuminating the darkness. It was only a matter of time before they breached the building. Finally, Maria announced, "The program's ready. We just need to broadcast the signal." Emily checked the power levels one last time. "Everything's stable, let's do it." Alex took a deep breath and pressed the button to activate the transmitter. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, faintly at first but growing stronger, A low hum filled the air. The lights flickered, and the temperature in the room dropped noticeably. Outside, the sky began to change. Clouds swirled rapidly, forming dense formations that crackled with electricity. Lightning bolts shot downward, striking the Vorthan ships with terrifying force. One of the smaller vessels exploded in a burst of light, sending shards of metal raining down onto the desert floor. The others retreated slightly, their glowing surfaces flickering as if struggling to maintain stability. The Vorthan weren't attacking yet, but it was clear they were caught off guard by the sudden shift in Earth's atmosphere. Inside the station, the trio watched in awe as their plan unfolded. The nanobots were responding, creating a protective barrier around the planet. But the victory was bittersweet. The energy required to sustain the shield was immense, and the strain on the equipment was evident. Sparks flew from overloaded circuits, and the generators groaned under the pressure. "We can't keep this up forever," Emily warned, shouting over the noise. "The system's going to overload," Maria typed furiously on her laptop, trying to stabilize the signal. "I'm working on it. Just give me a minute." Alex grabbed a fire extinguisher and rushed to put out small fires breaking out around the room. His hands trembled as he sprayed foam onto smoldering wires, but he forced himself to stay focused. They had come too far to fail now. After what felt like an eternity, Maria let out a triumphant cry. "Got it, I've adjusted the frequency. The nanobots are stabilizing." The hum subsided slightly and the lightning storm outside began to ease. The Vorthan ships hovered uncertainly, their earlier confidence replaced by caution. One of them emitted a pulsing beam, likely attempting to counteract the nanobots' effects, but it was no match for the adaptive nature of Earth's newfound defense system. "They're retreating," Alex shouted, pointing to the window. Sure enough, the Vorthan ships were pulling back, ascending higher into the atmosphere. Their leader's voice echoed once more, though this time it carried a note of uncertainty. "You are not what we expected," Zynar admitted. "This world, it fights back." And then, as suddenly as they had arrived, the Vorthan disappeared into the void, leaving behind an eerie silence. Back inside the station, the three of them collapsed onto the floor, exhausted but victorious. For the first time in days, they allowed themselves to breathe. The immediate threat was gone, but they knew the battle wasn't truly over. The nanobots had saved Earth for now, but their existence raised profound questions about humanity's future. "What happens next?" Maria asked softly, breaking the quiet. Alex shook his head, staring at the glowing screen of the laptop. "I don't know, but one thing's for sure. We're not alone anymore, and neither are they." Emily smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting both relief and concern. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the desert sky in hues of gold and pink, Alex couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and unease. Humanity had survived its first encounter with an alien species, thanks to forces beyond anyone's understanding. But the true challenge lay ahead, learning to coexist with powers they barely comprehended, and deciding who or what would ultimately control Earth's destiny. The days following the Vorthan's retreat were a blur of chaos and uncertainty. News of the alien encounter spread across the globe, sparking debates, protests, and endless speculation. Governments scrambled to explain what had happened, while scientists tried to make sense of the nanobots that had seemingly saved humanity. For Alex, Maria, and Emily, life became a whirlwind of interviews, meetings, and investigations. They were hailed as heroes by some, and questioned as dangerous radicals by others. But through it all, one thing was clear: Earth would never be the same. Back in New York City, the three of them gathered in their makeshift lab to assess the situation. The nanobots were still active, maintaining a protective barrier around the Yao planet. Their behavior had stabilized, but they remained vigilant, ready to respond to any new threats. Alex stared at the monitors displaying atmospheric data, his mind racing with questions. What did this mean for humanity? Could people learn to live alongside these microscopic guardians? Or would they become prisoners of their own creation? Maria sat beside him, typing notes into her laptop. "We need to figure out how to communicate with them," she said thoughtfully. If we can understand how they think, maybe we can control them. Emily shook her head, leaning against the wall. Control might not be the right word. These nanobots are autonomous. Trying to dominate them could backfire. Instead, we should focus on coexisting. Alex nodded slowly. She's right. We don't want to repeat past mistakes. Humanity has always feared what it doesn't understand. And look where that's gotten us. Their conversation was interrupted by a knock. At the door, a young man in a military uniform stood outside, holding a folder under his arm. He introduced himself as Lieutenant James Harper, sent by a newly formed international coalition tasked with addressing the aftermath of the Vorthon incident. We need your help, Harper said bluntly. The world is divided about what to do next. Some leaders want to weaponize the nanobots, while others believe we should shut them down entirely. We're hoping you can provide insight. Alex exchanged glances with Maria and Emily. They knew this moment would come eventually. The discovery of the nanobots had shifted the balance of power, and now everyone wanted a piece of it. But giving humans direct control over such a powerful force carried enormous risks. We can't let anyone use the nanobots as weapons, Maria said firmly. They're guardians, not tools. If we start manipulating them, we could lose everything they've protected. Harper frowned, clearly frustrated. You don't think the rest of the world will see it that way? People are scared. They'll demand answers and action. Emily stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. Then it's our job to educate them. The nanobots aren't just machines, they're part of Earth's ecosystem now. Humanity needs to adapt, not the other way around. Harper hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. I'll pass along your message, but I can't promise it'll be enough. After he left, the room fell silent. The weight of responsibility hung heavy in the air. Alex rubbed his temples, feeling the strain of everything they'd been through. This isn't going to be easy, he muttered. People won't listen unless we show them proof. Maria smiled faintly. Then let's give them proof. Over the next few weeks, Alex, Maria, and Emily worked tirelessly to gather evidence of the nanobots' role in protecting Earth. Using advanced imaging technology, they captured footage of the tiny machines repairing damaged ecosystems, neutralizing pollutants, and even aiding natural disasters like wildfires and hurricanes. They compiled their findings into a presentation designed to demonstrate the nanobots' value, not as weapons, but as partners in humanity's survival. Their efforts paid off when they were invited to speak at an emergency summit held in Geneva. Representatives from every nation gathered in a massive conference hall, their expressions ranging from skepticism to outright hostility. As Alex stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces, he felt a surge of nerves. This was their chance to change the course of history, if they could convince the world to listen. Ladies and gentlemen, Alex began, his voice steady despite his anxiety. What we've discovered is more than just science. It's a glimpse into the future, a future where humanity doesn't stand alone. The nanobots in our atmosphere have evolved alongside us, adapting to protect us from threats both natural and artificial. They are not invaders or creations of human design. They are guardians, born out of necessity and driven by purpose. He paused, letting his words sink in. Behind him, a screen displayed images of the nanobots at work, their intricate movements, mesmerizing to watch. These machines represent hope, not fear. They remind us that strength doesn't come from domination, it comes from cooperation. If we embrace this truth, we can build a better world. But if we reject it, we risk losing everything. When he finished speaking, the room erupted into murmurs. Some delegates nodded approvingly while others argued amongst themselves. Maria took the stage next, presenting detailed data to support Alex's claims. By the time Emily concluded the presentation, the mood had shifted slightly. Doubts lingered, but there was also curiosity and a growing recognition of the nanobots' importance. In the weeks that followed, public opinion began to sway. Documentaries aired on television, showcasing the nanobots' impact on the environment. Scientists published papers highlighting their potential benefits. Slowly but surely, humanity started to see the bigger picture. The nanobots weren't enemies, they were allies, But the journey wasn't without challenges. Corporations lobbied for access to the nanobots' technology, hoping to profit from it. Militaries pushed for research into defensive applications. Environmentalists warned of unintended consequences if the delicate balance was disrupted. Amid the noise, Alex, Maria, and Emily remained steadfast, advocating for caution and respect. 1. Evening. As they stood together on a rooftop overlooking the city, Alex turned to Maria with a tired smile. "Do you think we'll ever get used to this?" he asked. Maria chuckled softly. "Probably not, but that's okay. Change is hard, but it's also necessary." Emily joined them, gazing up at the stars. "The Vorthon underestimated us," she said quietly. "They thought we were weak because we're fragile, emotional, unpredictable. But those traits are what make us strong. We adapt. We survive. And now, thanks to the nanobots, we have a fighting chance." As the first snow of winter began to fall, coating the city in a soft blanket of white, Alex felt a sense of peace settle over him. Humanity's story was far from over, and the road ahead would undoubtedly be fraught with challenges. But for the first time in a long time, he felt hopeful. The nanobots had shown them that Earth was more resilient than anyone had imagined, and so were its inhabitants. Together, humanity and the nanobots faced the unknown, united by a shared purpose. The stars above seemed closer somehow, their light, a reminder that no matter how vast the universe, the smallest forces could shape the greatest destinies. Months passed since the Vorthon's departure, and life on Earth began to settle into a fragile new normal. The nanobots continued their work silently, weaving through the atmosphere like invisible threads holding the planet together. Their presence was no longer a secret. Instead, they became a symbol of hope for many. People referred to them as Earth's guardians, and murals depicting glowing particles protecting the planet appeared on walls in cities around the world. Yet despite the growing acceptance, tensions simmered beneath the surface. Alex, Maria, and Emily found themselves at the center of an ongoing global debate. Governments and corporations alike sought ways to harness the nanobots' power, while activists argued for their preservation as an independent force. Scientists studied them obsessively, trying to unlock their secrets without fully understanding the risks involved. Every discovery brought both excitement and fear, an endless cycle of wonder and caution. For Alex, the pressure was relentless. He spent most days in meetings or giving interviews, explaining the importance of respecting the nanobots' autonomy. But late at night, when the noise of the world faded, he often found himself staring out his apartment window, wondering about the bigger picture. What did it mean to share the planet with beings so vastly different from humans? How could humanity prove itself worthy of such a gift? Maria, too, struggled with her own doubts. She had always believed in science as a tool for progress, but now she questioned whether humanity was ready for the responsibility that came with this kind of knowledge. Her nights were filled with restless dreams of glowing clouds and swirling particles, visions that left her feeling both awestruck and uneasy. Emily, on the other hand, seemed more at peace than either of them. Having lived off the grid for years, she understood better than anyone the dangers of overreach. "Humans have a habit of playing God," she often said during their late-night discussions, "but sometimes it's better to let nature take its course." One chilly morning, as the three of them gathered in their lab, a new development shook their routine. A team of researchers in Europe claimed to have successfully communicated with the nanobots using a complex algorithm based on quantum frequencies. According to their report, the nanobots responded by forming patterns that suggested intelligence, not just reactive behavior, but actual awareness. The news sent shockwaves through the scientific community. If true, it meant the nanobots weren't merely machines. They were sentient entities capable of thought and decision-making. For Alex, Maria, and Emily, the revelation raised profound ethical questions. Should humanity attempt to establish formal communication, or would doing so risk disrupting the delicate balance they had worked so hard to maintain? "We need to see this for ourselves," Alex said, pacing the room. If the nanobots really are intelligent, we owe it to them, and to us, to understand what that means. Maria nodded, already typing commands into her laptop. I'll reach out to the research team. Maybe they'll let us collaborate. Emily hesitated, her expression wary. Be careful. Just because we can talk to them doesn't mean we should. Remember what happened when the Vorthons scanned the atmosphere. They triggered something none of us expected. Her warning lingered in the air, but curiosity outweighed caution. Within days, Alex and Maria traveled to Geneva, where the European research team operated out of a state-of-the-art facility. The lab was a hive of activity, with scientists huddled over computers and monitors displaying streams of data. At the idea center of it all stood Dr. Rachel Meyer, a soft-spoken woman with sharp eyes and an intense focus. This is groundbreaking, Rachel explained as she led them through the lab. We've identified specific frequencies that resonate with the nanobots. When we broadcast those signals, they respond by altering their formations. It's almost like conversation. She gestured to a large screen showing images of the nanobots clustering into intricate shapes, geometric patterns, spirals, even what looked like crude representations of human faces. Alex felt a chill run down his spine. The implications were staggering. Have you tried asking them anything? Maria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Rachel shook her head. Not yet. We're still learning how to structure the signals properly, but if we succeed, it could change everything. Over the next few days, Alex and Maria worked closely with the team, refining the algorithms and testing new methods of communication. Progress was slow, but eventually they managed to send a simple message, "Who are you?" The response came hours later in the form of another pattern, a series of concentric circles expanding outward. It wasn't language in any traditional sense, but it carried meaning nonetheless. The nanobots were acknowledging the question, perhaps even attempting to answer it. They're alive, Alex murmured, watching the screen in awe. They're really alive. Word of the breakthrough spread quickly, reigniting debates worldwide. Religious leaders proclaimed the nanobots as divine creations while philosophers debated their moral status. Conspiracy theorists accused the scientists of fabricating the results, while others called for immediate diplomatic efforts to negotiate with the nanobots. Back in New York, Emily monitored the situation from afar, growing increasingly concerned. This is moving too fast, she told Alex and Maria during a video call. People are treating the nanobots like assets to be exploited, not partners to be respected. She's right, Maria agreed. We need to slow things down before someone makes a mistake. But slowing down proved impossible. The allure of communicating with an alien intelligence was too great. Soon, multiple teams around the world began experimenting with similar techniques, each racing to achieve the next milestone. Competing agendas clashed, and the once unified effort fractured into chaos. Then, one evening, disaster struck. A group of rogue scientists, funded by a private corporation, attempted to manipulate the nanobots into performing specific tasks designed to benefit their sponsors. Using unauthorized frequencies, they bombarded the atmosphere with aggressive signals demanding compliance. The nanobots reacted violently, unleashing a storm of energy that disrupted communications and caused widespread blackouts across several countries. Panic spread as reports flooded in of malfunctioning technology and erratic weather patterns. Governments scrambled to contain the fallout, pointing fingers at one another while the rogue team went silent, vanishing without a trace. Alex, Maria, and Emily watched the unfolding crisis from their lab, hearts sinking with each update. This is exactly what we were afraid of, Emily said bitterly. Human greed and arrogance, it never changes. Determined to prevent further damage, the trio devised a plan to stabilize the nanobots. Drawing on their earlier work, they crafted a calming signal designed to reassure the nanobots and restore balance. Working around the clock, they coordinated with trusted allies around the globe to broadcast the signal simultaneously. It took nearly 2 days, but gradually, the disturbances subsided. The nanobots returned to their usual routines, repairing damage caused by the rogue experiment and reinforcing Earth's protective barrier. Though the immediate threat had passed, the incident left deep scars, not just on the planet, but on humanity's collective psyche. In the aftermath, Alex addressed the United Nations, urging world leaders to establish strict regulations governing interactions with the nanobots. "These beings saved us once," he said, his voice firm. "Let's not make them regret it." His words resonated, leading to the creation of an international council tasked with overseeing all research related to the nanobots. For the first time, humanity seemed willing to prioritize cooperation over competition. As winter gave way to spring, Alex, Maria, and Emily stood together on a hill overlooking the city. The sky was clear, dotted with stars that seemed brighter than ever. Despite everything they had been through, there was a sense of cautious optimism in the air. "We've come a long way," Maria said softly, "but we still have so much to learn." Emily smiled, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "And maybe that's the point. Maybe the nanobots aren't here to give us answers. They're here to teach us how to ask the right questions." Alex nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them together, as humans, as scientists, and as stewards of a planet unlike any other.